Welcome to another webinar of Snap Raise Live Leaders and Legends. We are joined today by the co-defensive coordinator at Ole Miss, Chris Partridge, as the ongoing commitment to our leaders in this uncertain time of coronavirus. We're trying to provide more resources, more insight, and more experience to the people that we work with and the people that we provide value to. Again, we've helped to fundraise over $350 million for teams, groups, and clubs across the country since 2014, and football is a sport that's near and dear to our heart. Our CEO is a former quarterback at Central Washington University and Washington State University, so we appreciate all the football coaches out there, and we appreciate you, Chris Partridge, for joining us today. Thank you.
Yeah, what's up, JT? Does everyone know me and you go way back, or what?
I don't know. We haven't primed him that way, but we go back to 2016. University of Michigan, Coach Partridge is special teams coordinator and linebackers coach, and we had some fun times traveling, recruiting down in Georgia, going to see movies with Coach Harbaugh. I still got the picture of us in the concession line with Coach Harbaugh. These are funny stories.
Yeah, good stuff, man. But I hope you're well, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. I definitely wanted to get you on here because you're a regular guy, just like so many of the high school coaches out there. You were a high school coach yourself. You can identify with the challenges of, running a high school program. And, I think to kind of start at the beginning, not all the way back to Lafayette, where you played and coached, but your high school days at Paramus Catholic, when you took over the program, they were, I think, 4,250th. And so what was it like going into that program, taking over Paramus Catholic and trying to, build a program, build a culture into a national, champion caliber?
Wow, that's a loaded question right there. But you don't really, for me, I never looked at that number like, oh, where are we ranked, or how is this team? Is it good? Is it bad? I attacked it because it was where I went. I had gone to high school there, and when I got the job, I couldn't be more excited. If they were the number one team in the country versus the number 5,000 team in the state, it was like, hey, this is my alma mater. Let's go try to get this thing to as far as we can, and I think the main thing, that you got to do with a team when you take it over like that is you got to unify the current team. I like, a lot of coaches kind of say, well, you got to go put your program in and run the guys out that aren't with your program. I'm not a believer in that. When we took over that team, the number one goal was, whether they were terrible football players, good football players, average, we tried to unify them together on that football team, and then we tried to set the tone of who we were going to be outside of the game, right, outside of playing football. We were going to, I think we did a really good job in implementing study halls and just making them understand, doing community service events and making them understand that this thing was going to be a well-rounded program, because, looking at it from now, looking back, that was what really helped us when we did get really, really good, because it was able to keep those guys grounded and keep them, to where they understood, hey, this is the program that has been established. It's not just winning big time football games. It's, we're going to be asked to do stuff in the community. We're going to be asked to be upstanding models in the school. So, I'm proud of that foundation right off the bat, and the way that we were able to bring that first team together. I mean, those guys, are still some of my closest, some guys that text me and talk to me all the time about, how we set the tone for their lives. So, but it was a challenge. We were taking on some giants, man, in that conference. So, it was a challenge. We were able to attract good players by treating the kids right, and they enjoyed the program, and it was hard work, but it was at the same time. I like to think, I'm kind of a player's coach. I'll be hard on them, but I'm always truthful with them, and always honest, and kids appreciate that in the long run, and their parents appreciate that in the long run. So, I think, as we built the thing, we got tighter and tighter as a team, as a group, and those guys from that first team, from that first year, those seniors, they helped get other kids in. They helped get the 8th graders in, the transfers in, whatever it might be, because of the experience they were having. And we went 4-6 that year, which for them was a good year, but for outside looking in, it wasn't. But their experience helped build that thing.
You managed to coach two outstanding players that people would recognize in the NFL, Jabril Peppers and Rashawn Gary. What of your program do you think most led to their development and fostered their growth? Because, I mean, Rashawn was the #1 recruit in the country. Jabril was highly touted. And so how did you really, how did you coach outstanding players? How is it that you handle, once in a lifetime type talents in developing them and maturing them, making sure that they're held accountable and responsible, but at the same time, allowing them to achieve their maximum potential?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the bottom line is, I mean, you got to understand this, the whole business, what we do is about relationships. And for us as coaches, it's about understanding the individual and how they think, how they do things, what their motivations are, what they go home to, what is their outside influences. And, I say that because Jabril and Rashawn, it wasn't like, wow, this guy's potential to be the #1 player in the country, I got to coach him like this. It was like, who is Rashawn Gary? Who is Jabril Peppers? How are we going to motivate them to fit on this football team? Because we still, football is the greatest team sport there is in this world, right? So we still need to fit them in the team sport and in the football game. So, I just always look at every kid the same, right? I always try to see how am I going to motivate this guy the same. And, and we're Jabril and Rashawn, and you got to do some different things because they're so talented, right? And you might have guys that are lining up against them that aren't as talented, but so for those guys, they're two very different young men, right? And this is funny because they're both first-round draft picks, right? They both have tremendous careers in high school and college, and they're very different personalities, but they had a couple things in common. And when I look back and I reflect, and Devin Bush is another young man who's a first-round draft pick that I really got close to and got to see on a personal level every day, and so I add him into that. And really, you have three different young men completely, from their home life to how they were raised to everything, really. And they had three things in common when I look back at it. Number one, they were always 3.0 students, which is interesting, right? You say, well, why are you talking about that? Well, I don't know, but there were 3 first-round draft picks from different walks of life that all had a 3.0 in high school and college. They took care of their business. That's what that shows me, on and off the field. They didn't just say, I'm a great player. Rashawn Gary, I'm the #1 player in the country. I don't have to do what I need to do in school. Well, he continued it all the way through his college education. So all three of those guys were tremendous young men in the school, right, with the faculty, with the teachers, getting good grades, doing what they needed to do. Number two was when their cleats hit the grass, you couldn't turn them off. I remember the first time I was coaching Jabril Peppers, it was right before the first game. It was a Thursday, right? We were playing on Friday night, and we're in helmets, and this guy is literally running 1,000 miles per hour, breaking up passes, like pretty much coming downhill from a safety position, pretty much with no pads on, tackling the running back in high school. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And I realized, like, he can't turn it off. But then when I look at all three of those first-round draft picks, they were all the same. They cannot turn it off when that helmet goes on, when their cleats hit the field. So when I reflect on those guys, that's another thing that they all had. They couldn't turn it off. And then the third thing was they understood that this was a team game. They understood their teammates. So to kind of answer your question in a full circle, they were easy to coach. They were easy to handle because they were at the top of it, right? They did not say, I'm better than this guy over here. You need to give me the ball, or we need to do it this way. No, they understood that it was about the team. It was about the group. They took young guys under their arm. They were coaching just as much as they were, playing. They were trying to develop their football team. So for those two, it was easier. It wasn't that a challenge in high school. It was like, let's support them. Let's understand who they are, right? Let's coach them to who they are. Let's form the relationship so they trust me and I trust them. But, no one was harder on those guys than me. I tried to get them, one of the greatest things you can do as a coach is take a young man and blow it right through his ceiling. Let him look up and see where his ceiling is, and then just explode it through. And and guys, sometimes it takes some hard coaching. Sometimes it takes some different avenues and different motivations. But I think that's what I tried to push those guys to do, is become the best person and player that they could be. And I mean, I guarantee if you ask them, sometimes they didn't always agree with it, but now I think when they look back at it, they're like, well, yeah, he always had it, our best interest at heart.
This will be a little bit of a niche question here, but his first camp, Devin Bush Jr., was in the top 10 for reps during training camp, but he was a backup. He was a backup, right? He was backing up Mike McCray at Mike linebacker. And you talked about how you can't turn him off, how you got to get him on the field. Like, what were those conversations like when you're taking someone who is a very talented high school player who then desperately wants to get on the field in college? I mean, you're just getting him out there, getting him exposure and introducing him to the speed of the game. Or what was that like your first year as a true position coach at Michigan?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing too, JT, because a lot of coaches will sit here and say, well, shoot, he's a freshman, he needs to get all those reps, but a lot of kids can't handle that, and it breaks them down. So there's a fine line with that too. I've had plenty of kids who, where Devin is going to go into a camp and take 1,000 reps and still be full speed and still be fine and keep wanting more. I've had kids on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Who, once they're at like 250, 300 reps, their eyes start getting wide and they're like, whoa, this camp is like way too crazy for me. Well, you better as a coach dial that back for those guys, because then you lose them for that freshman year. But like I mentioned before, Devin was the top of it, right? Devin's easy, man. It's like, you try to rest him and he wants to take a swing at you. You try to say, hey, you're not in the rotation for this period, take a couple plays off. No, that ain't happening, man. He wants to get his looks. He wants to get his plays in, so it's all, this whole thing is, I mean, you're dealing with so many different types of personalities and people, and it all comes down to the relationships and your understanding of who they are as a person. But for me, like Devin, it's like, that was an easy one, man. It was, he was going to get out there. He was going to make whatever coach was coaching him look good, and he was going to go make plays in his freshman year, and ended up getting himself on the field.
So then I guess I'll transition to a walk-on, Will Hart, who ended up setting the single season yards per punt record at Michigan. You coach him, right? A regular guy, kind of off the street. He's got a scholarship guy in front of him, but you get the most out of him and you're connecting with him. What was that experience like, where you're able to take someone who, is, disregarded by many and then turn him into an all league caliber player?
Yeah. So, that's funny because you just hit the nail on the head, so like Devin, Jabril, Rashawn, they had the mentality and I guess I want to say the right word. They had the confidence that they were going to get on the field and play early and were meant to be where they were, right? When they walked in the door at college. Well, Will Hart was the opposite, right? Will Hart was going to Colgate, right? He hadn't gotten money and was going to Colgate. And, we had to convince Will, you are good enough to play here. Like, you have a very powerful leg. And he was still unsure when he came onto campus. So very, very different worlds that you're dealing with as a coach, right? But, so Will, it was all about giving him the confidence, putting him in positions to succeed early, not letting him get out there and, and shank 5 punts in practice and say, why the heck did I, decide to walk on here instead of, go to Colgate where I could, have gotten more money and been playing, and so with Will, it was constantly, trying to make sure he understood that. And, and then it's funny, it's like, his freshman year was a little challenging. I don't think he ever gained confidence, but then he got stronger. He got in the weight room, and all of a sudden, he was starting to swing through the ball, and, that thing started flying, and you saw this like spark in his eye, like, wow, I think I can do this. And then from there, it was like he took it on himself. He's like, Coach, I'm good now. He shanked the punt where his freshman year, I'm putting my arm around him. Now he's like, get the hell away from me. It's bullshit. You know what I'm saying? So like, you kind of see the growth in someone like that. Very, very different worlds of coaching and types of kid, in different situations.
Well, I'm not expecting you to give away any trade secrets here, but you did lead the country in kickoff coverage. And I loved watching that and marveling at the tactics. Where did you come up with the ideas to really pin them down, and what was the messaging like, and how is it that you were able to hold teams to 15 yards per return? I mean, that is stifling.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a great year. We had a lot of fun with that. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and take like credit, like, oh, I'm this kickoff guru and we did this. I mean, the bottom line is we had a kicker who, could put the ball in the air and was good at it. It's funny. He walked on off the street and, was kind of like James Fogle I'm talking about, was running from 25 yards away to kick the ball during his walk tryout, right? It's like, this guy's just sprinting 25 yards away and kicking the ball and just shanking everything. But, Tyler Brown, who worked with us, said, that guy's got a really strong leg. We should put him on the team for the spring. So I give Tyler a lot of credit for that. And, and then we developed him to being able to move up from 25 yards to about a 7-yard approach. And instead of hitting the top of the ball, hit under the ball. And that thing was going up. And, Will was the guy, James was the guy who then took a lot of pride in it, right? And it's the only thing you can do. He wasn't a field goal kicker. It's like, hey, if you're going to make this team and help this team, forget a touchbacks. We got a guy that can do that. Can you put the ball on like the 2-yard line on like a 4-2 hang? He was like, sure, I can do that. Practiced it all summer, came back in camp. All of a sudden, we're getting 4-4 hangs to like the 2-yard line. So, we went to this mentality like, if you're going to be on our kickoff team, we ain't kicking it in the end zone, right? And then, we went to the stopwatch. If you can't run, this flying 40 in a 4-5, you ain't going to be on our kickoff. And, the players just got hungry with it and just started loving it. And, then it was like, now all of a sudden we're kicking people's ass. We go into the first game, we were playing Florida and just decimate them on kickoff. Well, now it's like, guys, I can do that, coach. I can do that. Okay, fine. Anyone that gets blocked by a frontline guy, the second guy is in the next kickoff. You're out. So then, okay, now the next game, someone gets touched by a frontline guy. Hey, take a bench, take a seat, you're in. Someone else is in. So then it was like this huge competition. Now all of a sudden we're in game 6 or 7. No one's even getting touched by the front line. We're twisting, we're swarming. It kind of just took off from there.
Yeah, it was fun to watch, fun to be a part of, and set our defense up pretty nicely when you're able to do that week in and week out. And so you've got all of this coaching aptitude and ability, and you had some experience at Lafayette and then at the Citadel. When did you know that you could be a high level college coach? Because you went back to Paramus Catholic, you had some family stuff going on, and so you settled that. You were there for 2010 to 2014, but how did you get back into the college scene, and then when did you have the confidence to really know, I guess, that you could do this at a really high level?
Yeah, wow, that's a good one there. I don't, to answer your question, in my mind, like I still don't have the confidence. I try to earn it every single day. I try to, never look back at the past and anything that I've done, and always move forward to try to be better, right? I think that's really important when you're trying to get to the highest level you can, and when you're dealing with kids, and you got to constantly every day. Every time I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking, hey, how do I motivate this kid in my position, or this kid in my group, or am I teaching this the right way? Am I doing this the right way? It becomes an everyday thing. So, I just, the confidence just came by just going at it and doing it. I think, something that always sticks with me is my college defensive coordinator and my college linebacker coach, who, they're some of my best friends to this day. I love them, John Luce and Matt Hackman. They're both coaching right now, and I had gone back and I was a captain for them, and I'd gone back and I coached for them. And then, I left them, I went to the Citadel, and when I had to leave the Citadel and I had to go home, I had some things go on with the family and I had to get home. Those guys were like more devastated than anybody, right? They were like, you're one of the best young coaches we've ever been around. Like, are you sure? Is there anything that we can, help, kind of just didn't want me to leave the college game at the time, right? And I always kind of remember that back, because those two really, helped give me confidence, as I went through it. It's like, all right, well, we go take over Paramus Catholic, and it's like, all right, well, I have the opportunity to now get back into college. I've always seen this. I've always wanted this. Well, I always thought of those two guys calling me devastated when I had left, to leave the thing. And they kind of have given me the confidence where it's like, well, shoot, those two the guys who I revere, who I think are awesome, thought I should be doing this forever. So I'll take a risk. I'll go take a recruiting job at Michigan and, head out there with a backpack when people are like, are you nuts? have one of the premier high school jobs in the country at the time. But so that helped, right? It's like, your mentors, the people that you looked up to, those little things that they give you, I think they always help give me confidence there. And then, I just love dealing with people, and when it comes down to it, that's what we do. And as long as you have a good heart and the right, mindset and want to do the right thing for people, I mean, you can really, in this game, you could take off. Obviously there's a little bit more added to it. You got to love to watch some film and be a student of playing of football too. But, when it comes to the relationships and the people and things like that, I had no fear that, I'd be able to connect and do whatever job that I had to do. Remember, I went to Michigan and I was, right, assistant recruiting coordinator, right? I wasn't a position coach or, I had aspirations to grow it, and be that, but it wasn't like I was right off the bat looking to do it. I wanted to do great from whatever job I took.
Yeah, and that attitude persists in every role that you've been in for sure. And I remember you building up your chops recruiting specifically down in Georgia. And I talked to you about it because between Aubrey Solomon or Otis or all these guys, really highly touted players out of there. You're going down there and you're knowing the lingo, you're investing in it. I'm like, what's Houston County? You're like, it's Houston County. Like, you got to know how to say these things, right? And so, you win Recruit of the Year 2016. You do it in 2017 again for a different service. I think it was Scout one year, 24/7 the next. And you're great with people, absolutely. And so that has served you well throughout your career, the entire time. But, I guess I want to know what advice you give current high school coaches to become college coaches. And your cousin just did it, who was a state champion in California. Now he's going to Ferris State. He's got a little bit more than a backpack. He's moving cross country with his family. But, they've got new rules in place. The individual associated with the prospect, you can't recruit players that you've known for the last 2 years or whatever that looks like. But what advice, I guess, do you give current high school coaches who want to grow, who want to get to the college level like you did? And you've kind of dropped some knowledge already, but, any more wisdom that you might have that way?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that rule is horse crap. I would love to try to get that thing taken out because, how do you make a rule that hurts someone's career, in their career growth and their career path? And, so that I'm not a fan of that one. But, I think, advice wise, the best thing to look at is I think that people see the end game in a lot of things rather than the process through it, right? So it's and Jim told me this too. It's Jim would have never hired me if I hadn't won, right? I mean, it's true. People that are successful in what they do, right? You need to be successful in what you do. And that could be a million different things. You might not be a high school head coach. You might be an assistant. Well, what do your players look like? What are their grades? How are they consistently performing on the field? If you're, say, the linebacker coach, right? Are they all league guys? Are they, do they love you? Are they being successful when they go to college? If you're in a high school head coach, how successful are you? How successful is your program? How successful are the young men that are coming out of your program? So I think that's a big step to this thing. People want to hire guys that are successful, right? So, finding a niche that you're going to win at, that you're going to be successful, finding a place that you're going to be successful, I think is the first thing, right? And then, really it's don't look at the end game, right? Don't look at me where I am now, look at what I was willing to do, right? So I left Paramus Catholic, which was, at the time, we were rolling. I mean, we had the #1 player in the country. We were, we had been in the state championship 3 times. We were beating national teams. And I took a recruiting assistant job at Michigan. I didn't go and look at and say, well, shoot, I'm this great high school coach. I should be the linebacker coach at Michigan. No, I said, that's Michigan. I'll take anything. I'll clean the facility at night. I want to put my work in and grow and prove that I belong there, no matter what I've done in the past, right? So, and I tell the players this all the time too. Don't look at the top 5 picks in the first round of the NFL and how they got there, right? Make sure you understand the path and the process of everything. Don't just watch the draft. Understand the work ethic that comes in, and look at the total picture. So, I've talked to a lot of high school coaches and that about the same thing. And one of the worst, things that they can say is, well, I just, I need to get a position job right off the bat, coming from high school. Well, that's few and far between, man. You're going to have to reinvent and rework your way up the ladder. And then it's not always feasible. There aren't the Ryan Partridge in the world who, have a great job in Cali. He wins there. He's an ultra successful high school coach. Well, he has to go and he's driving across the country, for a D2 job in Ferris as a linebackers coach, right? He's willing to, hey, take a step back, and this is the job that I can get to get in the college ranks. I trust the head coach, I trust the people, and this is where I want to go. So, it's a lot harder than it looks, in terms of that. But I just think you gotta see what's right for your family, and if you can do it, and if you can, don't be scared to break into a program, because the cream rises. Good people, they rise to the top. The people with wholesome hearts that care about their kids, that motivate every day, that aren't scared to work long hours. They're going to rise in any profession. That's just what this world is built on. So it's just, don't be scared to take smaller roles if they come about. And then networking is huge. Meeting people, talking to people, talking to I always said, if I'm fortunate to become a head coach, well, I'm going to figure out a way to get some high school guys in my program. NCAA rules, I know all that, and it's a lot harder to do that. But, meeting guys like me out there that think like that, I know, there's other coaches that think like that. Jim thinks like that. He's hired countless high school guys from Fanati to Bush and all that. But Jim Harbaugh doesn't know he's going to hire you unless you get in front of him, right? Or unless, that you're connected somehow.
Yeah, no, and all that's factual for sure. And so, you talked about, a path to college and networking and everything, and now you've ended up at Ole Miss. And so, I'm sure you've vetted, that opportunity and the people there. I mean, I guess, get us up to speed with what, Lane Kiffin, DJ Durkin, that whole staff looks like, and the type of culture that you guys are building in your first year there together. Yeah,
awesome, man. I mean, it's been incredible, for as incredible as it can be, fighting through a pandemic, right? And having a new staff. But, these guys are tremendous coaches and tremendous leaders of men. I love them, from the offensive staff with Lebby and Joe John Finley, and special teams coordinator Gideon, Durkin, Lane. I just think, the one thing that strikes me about Lane is he's been through it. I have an appreciation for guys that have been through it. He was head coach of the Raiders. He was at Tennessee. He was at USC. He reinvented himself at FAU. He's kind of gone through it on a roller coaster a little bit, high success, not so successful. And he's learned and he's grown from it, and he wants to teach. We get in the staff room and he's helping the coaches. He's teaching. He's an educator. That's the one thing that struck me since being in the room with him, and talking to him as I was going and deciding if I was going to, take the job. So I do. There's a lot to learn from a guy like that too. And he's got a lot of the same mindset as I do. He's a player's coach. He values the relationships with them and all that. DJ I worked with, for a year in Michigan, and really, really, really have a good relationship with him. I loved working with him. He was part of the reason, when this thing came about, and I was talking to Lane, and Lane mentioned DJ. It was like, okay, well, DJ is one of the sharpest coaches I've ever been around in my life. So I have a lot to learn from him still. And, that's another thing too, is like, going and taking this job and moving from Michigan special teams. I was coaching the safeties. It's like, well, you're going to be a co-DC and you're going to go into the SEC. Well, I don't think I know everything. I had a lot to learn, and the person that I was going to work for and the person I was going to work with needed to be someone that I felt like I can learn a ton from, right? So that when I'm ready for the next step after this. So that's DJ. Is a guy that I felt like I can learn a ton from. While I worked hand in hand with him. Young, hungry staff. It was easy. This thing hits. We're all, we can get on Zoom and do the technology stuff. I imagine some other staff struggled a little bit, but we were kind of rocking and rolling with it early, and I was laughing. We were actually talking about it. It's like, the staff is kind of, it's kind of a new age staff, which is fun. It's fun to be around.
Yeah, no, completely. I was watching your old defensive coordinator, Don Brown, on a webinar, and presumably, 3 or 4 months into this thing, you'd think that, he's kind of got it dialed, but, he had his assistant there making sure everything was dialed in and the audio and video were good. And so it was fun to see.
Yeah.
Want to give a shout out to people all over the country. You got Brandy Weisgarber and Brittany Bowden in Ohio and Florida, respectively. Daniel Cunningham out in California, and Darrell Duvall, if I'm saying your name right, down in Coppell High School down in Texas. So we got good representation across the country. And I think, something unique about high school football is that everybody loves their community and the local component of it. And so you're a North Jersey guy, and through and through. I mean, brag on North Jersey football and how good it is with St. Joe's, St. Peter's, Don Bosco, Bergen, everything. Paramus, obviously. I mean, how much do you enjoy that experience, and how great is North Jersey football?
Oh, shoot. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, it really is. When you talk about that conference, I mean, we played a game one year against Don Bosco, and, in Jabrill's senior year, we had 17 Division I kids, right, which is, Division I, 1AA. And we played a game against Don Bosco, and I think that particular year they had like 15 or something, right? And we back up the next game against St. Joe's, and they had like 18 guys that had ended up going out. So you're legitimately talking about, back to back to back. Then you had St. Peter's in, then you had Bergen in, back to back to back to back weeks where all these guys are going to be playing big time college football against each other, in a year. So it kind of gathers a ton of talent. That league gathers talent from Connecticut, from New York, some guys from Pennsylvania, and kind of all over New Jersey to come play in it. And then, traveling around and you're playing national. I think it's a little less now in terms of the national schedule. And obviously with this whole deal, there will be no national schedule. But it's just a lot of fun. And the rivalries were awesome. I had no love lost for any of those guys that I coached against while I was doing it, but I love them to death now, but like you gotta, to me, it's like, I want to, I got this team and I'm like trying to get these guys to beat these giants. It's like, well, I hate those giants just as much as you guys do. So I ain't scared to say it, so that was part of the kind of the mentality of, trying to build that thing. But, those guys are tremendous coaches. There's some great coach. Danny Sabella, you had mentioned earlier when we were talking, unbelievable ball coach. There's some great coaches up there too.
Yeah, well, it's awesome that some of these programs are able to get going and work out. It's different all over the country right now. In Alaska, they're like sanitizing bags and stuff in between drills, but they're getting going. Some places are delayed. Still some uncertainty, but always enthusiasm around the upcoming year. And I guess for you guys, it's still a little uncertain, but I mean, you've got to be chomping at the bit, just like the players, to get going, huh?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, we've been doing 4 months of Zoom calls. So, once we got that thing rolling, it was like, can't wait to get this thing over with. So I told them Wednesday, I was like, I hope this is the last Zoom call we ever have to do. Everything else needs to be in person from now on. So we'll see about that. But, the bottom line is like and I tell these guys this all the time, like, we're not the only people dealing with this. So don't go rolling your eyes and saying, oh, I got another Zoom call, or I want to play football. My senior year is getting screwed. So is every other senior in the country. So is every other kid that plays any sport in the country, right? So don't get into this rut where you think you're the only person dealing with it. Right? We got to figure out how we can deal with it better than everyone else so that when we do set foot on the field, we're more prepared than anyone else. Right? So I'm always a guy, like, we need to stay positive. I'm an optimist, so, as we go through this, and I tell them too, like, this is going to end at some point. I don't know if it's Monday. Maybe they push us, who knows? Maybe they tell us to play in October, whatever it might be. At some point, the colleges in America are going to be playing football at a high competitive level. And that's not a reason, because you don't know when it's going to be lazy, right? You should be more so like, hey, whenever I'm called on, I'm going to be ready to play. I'm going to be ready to rock. So, so it is crazy. And people are going to do things at different times and different, it looks like the Big Ten might go conference, the Ivy League, maybe in the spring, maybe not even have a year. Like, but at the bottom line is like, that's what life's about. It hits you in different ways. It hits you. You just never know what's going to happen, and you got to take it, and you got to be positive, and you got to fight through anything that comes your way that you don't like. So I'm optimistic. I mean, here's what I do know. Like, I trust the leaders of these conferences and stuff to say, if it's not safe, if we can't figure it out, we'll punt it and do it some other time. But we'll play football at some point. We will, and we got to stay ready.
I trust that you're bringing that same relentless, indomitable, fierce mindset to the recruiting front because, you're so committed and invested that way. I guess, what does recruiting look like during the uncertain period for you? Are you just, hammering away and doing your best there too?
Yeah, I mean, you got to get a little creative with it, I think. For us, it's like we're a new staff and we didn't have many visits at all, and not many of these kids know us unless they know us from our old, schools. So it's just you're getting on Zoom, you're having talks, you're getting them to know you, you're staying in consistent contact. You're not letting them know they're just a number. My philosophy of recruiting is, whether I get a kid or not, I still form that relationship with him. I still got to know him. I still got to know his family. So if a kid that I'm recruiting, says, hey, I'm going to go to this other school, well, I don't say, oh, shit, we lost him. It's a 0%. That was a waste of time. I say, well, at least I got to know him and his family. You never know how it comes back around. So, it's just meeting people and connecting and then getting creative, trying to figure out, how to build a roster. Who knows? What if we don't get any visits? You got to prepare for everything. What happens when we get to December? I mean, how many kids are you going to be able to visit? Are you going to be able to visit them? What are you going to be able to do? So I just think you got to think outside the box. You got to get creative. You got to prepare for everything, and you got to form as many relationships as you can.
Last one here. You've done a great job cultivating an awesome family and a personal life, and your wife, Marissa. Your daughters, Mia and Gianna, are fantastic, and Mia especially has she's just got a great energy and a great spirit. How have you managed to balance this relentless recruiting and coaching and just 100,000 miles an hour with also being able to be a great husband and a great father?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you just got to make time. You got to figure out individually. Some coaches will say, "Well, you need to shut your phone off after this time," or no, it's who you are and who your family is that makes that work, right? It's the same way as coaching a player, right? And understanding who they are. It's just understanding the time that any time that I have goes to them. Any time that I have away from work needs to go to them. So it's a sacrifice, I think, for the individual as a coach that is going to work long hours and do that. Well, what is anything I have cannot be for me. It has to be for them. I think that's an important thing. And this has been awesome. I'm not going to lie. Just being home for the last 4 months and being able to get my youngest, I have a 16-month-old out of her bed every morning, right? Let my wife sleep in, and I feed her the bottle, and at least, I mean, that's stuff that I would have never been able to do at this time, or for the last 4 months if we're in spring ball and spend all day, and we're going to get off this podcast, I'm going to go down and I'm going to bring her in the pool, so just appreciating this time has been huge. And I think you're probably in the same boat because I know you have a young one, and then that's going to end at some point. We're going to go into camp. Well, when I'm into camp, like when am I going to be able to allot time to get home and spend time with the family, to shoot hoops with Mia, or whatever it might be? You got to think about it, because if you don't think about it, it ain't going to happen in this business. You get too busy. So I think about, hey, when am I going to be able to do what I need to do for my family, and spend the proper time with them.
Yeah, I've always loved your attitude and admired your work ethic and ambition and your approach to everything. So can't thank you enough for joining us today, and really appreciate you. You've got now a couple more Ole Miss fans for the upcoming season, whenever it is, 2020, 2021. So appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you, JT.
Yeah, no doubt. You're world class, and in 2 weeks we're going to have the 2019 International Weightlifting Federation Lifter of the Year, Kate Nye. She's going to be joining us, and so she'll be taking your seat, not in Oxford, but she'll be up there in Michigan in Rochester Hills. And
nice.
And she's going to the Olympics next year in Tokyo, and she's got a pretty good shot at medaling in the snatch, the clean and jerk, and the overall. So she'll be another great participant, and look forward to helping teams, groups, and clubs to raise even more money. But give you the last word here, CP, before we go. Any closing thoughts here?
Oh shoot! I mean, just to everybody out there, this world is crazy right now, and just stay positive, work hard, take care of your loved ones, and this thing we'll be back to normal. We will. You got to stay positive in that, and like I mentioned, I talked to the players. We're not in this alone. Everybody is in this thing. And don't let it get into your world and get negative and everything like that. I'm just that's really what I'm about. Hug and kiss your kids and wife every day, and be grateful, and stay positive, and work your butt off.
Simple recipe, easy to say, hard to do, but you've done it well. Appreciate you joining us today. Thanks a lot, CP.
All right, man. Thanks, JT.
Okay, you bet.